right, moving away from that, the Federation of International Football Associations' recent confirmation that member associations of clubs participating in the expanded 2025 Club World Cup, they may open a special transfer window from June 1st to June 10th. This will offer some unique opportunities for these clubs. Now, if this gets approved by the league, this temporary window will allow clubs to register new sign-ins before the tournament begins on June 15th, now giving them some competitive edge. This unprecedented move raises several questions regarding its implication for clubs, the leagues, and the global football transfer market in entirety. Now, to join us in this conversation, to help us make sense of this conversation, we have a football commentator, Andrew Olsson from the United States. Thank you so much, Andrew, for joining me on the show.
Onyechi, thank you for having me.
It's great to have you. It's a wet day over here in Lagos, Nigeria. How is it over there in the United States?
Well, the sun's just coming out, and the weather's always beautiful over here in Houston, Texas, Onyechi, so no complaints here.
No complaints indeed, but I'm loving the weather here, so too we are at odds at this time. But this initiative by the Federation of International Football Association gets a lot of people worried, especially clubs that will not be taking part in this Club World Cup. What are the potential benefits or even the drawbacks from clubs that can sign and register players just before the tournament begins?
Well, Onyechi, the major benefit, of course, is you mentioned players like Kevin De Bruyne, Alphonso Davies, Joshua Kimmich on Bayern Munich. It kind of clears up those legal issues you might have with players whose contracts are set to expire this season. Another player is Neymar on Al Hilal in Saudi Arabia. They're set to participate as well. So those are the benefits. I think it just kind of fixes any potential issues with that. As far as the drawbacks, you know, that applies to clubs like, you look at Liverpool, you know, Virgil van Dijk, Trent Alexander-Arnold, their contracts are set to expire this season. Could, in theory, a club like Real Madrid snatch one of those players up right before this competition? I don't really see it happening, but I think that's one of the potential drawbacks. But I think the main purpose of this was to ease clubs' concerns regarding the expiration of contracts for some of their players and to make sure they would have those players available.
But how could this affect the dynamics of team preparation and sport chemistry? We know how teams will have to bond. They need bonding in order to execute any fixture, any match day fixture, especially new players who are brought in later due to this transfer window.
Well, it'll certainly be a unique issue for these managers to deal with if their clubs do elect to bring in players during this improvised transfer window. I think, you know, if you look at the perspective of European clubs, they're going to be coming off a long season, so I don't think you're going to have too many issues with team chemistry there. I think for maybe some of the clubs in the Western Hemisphere, you know, you look at Brazilian clubs, the Major League Soccer clubs here in the United States, it's going to be right in the middle of their season. So that's going to be a real fixture congestion issue for them to deal with while they have their domestic seasons, or, you know, there's probably maybe going to be a break, but, you know, it's going to be adding on matches for these clubs who aren't quite as deep, who don't have squads that are as deep as European clubs. So it'll be interesting to see how that pans out. I don't think it'll impact the European clubs too much, other than potential injuries and fatigue from the long domestic and Champions League seasons.
All right, we know that a lot of the decision made by FIFA has been affecting some domestic clubs. We did hear from Rodri, who said that maybe one day they go on strike due to the congested calendar. The impact on domestic league is one that a lot of people are concerned with. Well, could this temporary transfer window create an uneven playing field for non-participating clubs, particularly in the leagues where the regular transfer window remain, you know, unchanged?
Well, this kind of makes the summer transfer window start a bit earlier, so to say. So, you know, usually we see clubs take their time before they make their first moves, or maybe they set up some free agent signings for the players to join when their contracts expire. So maybe that kind of puts these things more in play. You know, maybe a club like Manchester City or Chelsea might move to sign one of these players, like I mentioned with Liverpool, Virgil van Dijk, Trent Alexander-Arnold, for example. So it'll be interesting to see if maybe this kind of makes the transfer season start a bit earlier. I personally, I'm not sure if we're going to see clubs look to bring in free agent players right before this tournament because managers tend to value team chemistry and bringing in, really big significant players like these potential players I mentioned on Liverpool. That could be something that could disrupt team chemistry a bit, make your team a little less fluid in such an important competition. So I don't see too many signings coming, but we'll see. It could always be interesting. And of course, any injuries that may require signings for depth could prompt the club to make a signing in this transfer window.
Okay, money is very important when it comes to transfers. When you talk transfers, you talk money. Andrew, how might this influence the global transfer market, especially in terms of pricing and competition for players to lead up to the tournament, the Club World Cup?
Well, you mentioned it with Rodri. Players are playing so many matches per season these days. So clubs are going to have to continue to consider their depth, things like that. They're going to have to make their squads deeper. So we could see, the rich get richer, so to say. We could see clubs like Chelsea and Man City boosting their squads, making sure they have more players. Are you sure
Chelsea will want to do this? Chelsea has got a lot of players. Manchester United also have got a cap when it comes to players coming into the club. So clubs like Manchester United and Chelsea, do you think they might want to go for this one?
Well, I think what they might lobby for is maybe the expansion of the size of the squad you can have for these tournaments, so you can have registered. I mean, as you mentioned, these clubs, they have players on loan who could form, capable Premier League clubs just from the players they send out on loan. So that's where I think it might come to. I think we'll see an expansion of how many players you can register for these competitions, perhaps. I think that's what they'll lobby for, so they can include more players and have have those deeper squads for these competitions.
All right, let's talk about agents now, because they are also, they come to the fore here. They're part of the players in these transfer conversation. How will it impact the negotiations between player, agents and clubs? You know the whole thing about transfer. The club is involved, the agents is involved, and also we've got the player involved, knowing that a mid-year transfer window may alter some transfer strategies by players or even agents who want their players to move to a particular league or a particular club.
Yeah, of course, agents are always playing a crucial role in the transfer window. Sometimes we don't see them as much as the clubs and the players, but they have just as much, if not more, of an impact on these sorts of things. Agents will always be looking to be the advocates for the players in these cases when it comes to how many matches, match congestion, player fatigue, things like that. But I don't see this transfer window changing too many things. Maybe it'll make agents lobby more for players if they have a client whose contract is expiring, maybe trying to get an early move to participate in the competition like the FIFA Club World Cup. But I don't see it changing things too much because these agents do have such a huge role already in the transfer market and top level football at this point. So I think it's going to be kind of giving them maybe more power as already, but I don't see it changing the dynamics too much, but it might cause some more players to move earlier in the transfer window rather than these elite clubs taking their time and, taking their time to make their next transfer moves.
All right, let's see long-term implications. Can this fly? FIFA is just proposing this, but Andrew, do you have the confidence that this can fly?
Well, the contrast is Manchester City's the defending winners of the FIFA Club World Cup. They had to play 2 matches to win that competition. This time around, if they want to win it, they're going to have to play 7 matches. So we have that. We have the UEFA Champions League and the UEFA competitions and their expansion into this new league format for the group stage. It's definitely coming to a breaking point. As you mentioned with Rodri's comments, the players, apparently it's a real big topic of conversation in the dressing rooms. This is becoming more and more of an issue. It's kind of reaching a breaking point. FIFA's going to have to make some concessions. You know, like I mentioned, maybe being able to expand the squad and the amount of players that you can register, because this is sort of an issue that applies more to the elite clubs who are going to be playing in more competitions. But I think there's definitely going to be a breaking point where maybe some players take a stand, like you mentioned with Rodri, and where FIFA's going to have to make some concessions because the players don't like this, but the club owners, FIFA, they like this because they get the opportunity to go and play in the United States, expand their audience, you know, expand the prize money. But that's not such a good thing for the players necessarily because they have to play more matches. So we're going to see this this line continue to get stretched, and we're going to see it, I think, come to a breaking point where, you know, we're going to get lawyers involved, we're going to get advocates for the players involved. So it'll be interesting to see how this tournament goes, and if that leads to this, perhaps this breaking point that might come at some point.
I know it's going to get messier by the day. But I know you're indeed happy. Some clubs from the MLS might make it to the Club World Cup. And you get to see the likes of Lionel Messi. A lot talking about Lionel Messi having to play at the Club World Cup. Thank you so much, Andrew Olsson, for joining us on the show today. We appreciate your thoughts.
Thank you for having me, Onyechi.
Always a pleasure to have you. Right.